Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into a crypto that's, well, a little different. We're talking about XRP. This isn't a project chasing the latest trends in NFTs or gaming. No, its ambitions are much, much bigger. It's aiming to become the fundamental plumbing for the entire global financial system.
You know, when you think about crypto, your mind probably jumps straight to decentralized finance, NFT art, maybe some wild blockchain games, right? Well, XRP is playing a completely different sport. Its focus isn't on that retail world of DeFi and gaming. It is aimed squarely at the old guard: banks, institutions, and global payments.
So how in the world is it trying to pull this off? Well, here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with its core infrastructure, then look at the engine driving its adoption. After that, we'll get into the specific tools built for its niche, weigh its real-world uses against the risks, and finally, we'll peer into the future. All right, first up, the banking infrastructure. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. The XRP ledger, or XRPL, is the engine room for this whole operation. And honestly, you could say it's kind of boring, but that's entirely by design, and we're about to see why that's actually its superpower. Think of the XRPL less like a Swiss Army knife and more like a surgeon's scalpel. It's not trying to do everything for everyone. It was built with one single obsessive purpose in mind: to move value from point A to point B as fast and as cheap as digitally possible. And you can see that focus on speed right away. Transactions on the XRP ledger confirm in just 3 to 5 seconds. Seriously, that's about the time it takes to refresh your browser. It's a universe away from the minutes, or sometimes even hours, you might get stuck waiting on other blockchains. And the cost? It's just as wild. We're talking fractions of a single cent for a transaction. So you get this 1-2 punch of insane speed and ridiculously low cost. And that is the secret sauce for what it's trying to solve: those huge, clunky, expensive cross-border payments. And honestly, this quote just nails it. The goal isn't to compete for dApp developers or NFT artists. The goal is to become the underlying pipes and plumbing for how money moves around the globe between banks and financial institutions. They're playing a different game. Okay, so who's actually driving this massive push into the traditional finance world? Well, you really can't talk about the XRP ecosystem without talking about Ripple. They're the software company that's its primary champion and a huge driver of its adoption. So what does Ripple actually do? Well, they build these heavy-duty, enterprise-grade solutions for banks and payment providers. Their key product, Ripple Payments, has this really clever feature called on-demand liquidity. It basically uses the XRP asset itself as a bridge between two different fiat currencies, eliminating the need for banks to have tons of cash just sitting around in accounts all over the world. It frees up a ton of capital. And look, this isn't just some idea on a whiteboard. Ripple has been laser-focused on creating these payment corridors in parts of the world where traditional banking can be incredibly slow and expensive. We're talking about real financial institutions in Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East that are actively using this technology right now to improve their services. All right, we've talked about Ripple pushing this whole thing forward, but what about the actual tools that developers and users have to work with? I mean, if the ecosystem isn't packed with games and DeFi protocols, what are people actually building? Well, the answer is all about function over flash. Yeah, the ecosystem's real power is in the practical tools that make financial applications happen. You've got things like the XRPToolkit for managing accounts, development environments like XRPL Studio, and of course, secure wallets. But the really critical piece of the puzzle? These things called gateways. They're the on-ramps and off-ramps that connect the XRPL to good old-fashioned fiat currencies, making it possible to move money in and out. And all of these tools work together in a pretty neat flow. Developers can build specialized payment logic using things called hooks. Think of them as small, super-efficient smart contracts. Users then manage their assets securely in wallets, and those gateways provide that absolutely vital link back to the existing financial world. It's all about creating a practical, end-to-end system for finance. Okay, so we've got the tech and we've got the tools. But how is all of this actually being used in the real world? And maybe more importantly, what are the potential roadblocks? What are the criticisms that could derail its progress? The primary use case today is exactly what it was built for: business-to-business payments and remittances. We're talking about companies using XRP to send money across borders more efficiently. But beyond that, there's also a growing buzz around using the XRPL for settling and tokenizing real-world assets, things like real estate or even intellectual property. So here's where things get really fascinating.
The ecosystem's biggest strengths are also, in a way, tied to its biggest weaknesses. Its incredible speed and institutional focus, well, that comes with some serious concerns about centralization around Ripple. And because it's so hyper-focused on payments, it has a very limited dApp ecosystem, which, to some, looks like a major risk.
All right, so with that balanced picture in mind, let's look ahead. What's next for the XRP ecosystem? What can we expect to see play out over the next few years? The trajectory seems pretty clear. They're doubling down on what they do best. The focus is probably going to stay on institutional products, maybe things like ETFs. You can also expect a major expansion of that real-world asset tokenization and an even deeper push for integration with global banks and governments. So yeah, don't expect a sudden pivot to viral NFTs. XRP is staying in its lane.
So what's the bottom line here? XRP might not be the most exciting, creative, or fun ecosystem in crypto, but what it lacks in entertainment, it more than makes up for in pure utility. It's one of the very few projects that is actively and directly building bridges to the traditional financial system we use every day.
And that leaves us with one final, crucial question. Is XRP's laser focus on being the plumbing for banks and institutions its greatest competitive advantage, the thing that will make it indispensable? Or is it a fatal flaw, a decision that will see it left behind as the rest of the crypto world innovates at a breakneck pace? The answer to that question is going to determine the entire future of XRP.